welcome to Imagine What's Interview with the Pro. We got a special treat for you. It's the first show of the new year, and I wanted to do something kind of special. I figure so many people are out there right now in the dead of winter, surrounded by snow and cold. I wanted to take everybody off to a tropical paradise. And who better than to take us into a tropical paradise than the pro of tropical paradises himself? This is my good buddy, Tiki Tony. He is an artist, and he's an artist. He's a dad. He's an overall awesome dude. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. No pressure. Hey, Tony, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. That was an awfully hard intro to live up to, but I'll do my best.
Well, we can stop now and just quit while we're ahead if we need to.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we're doing
All
good.
right. So if you wouldn't mind, would you mind giving everybody Tiki Tony 101? Who the heck are you, and what do you do?
I'm a tiki artist, which I didn't know that was a thing. I have been for the last 25 years. I was fascinated with tikis, and I don't know why. Like beach culture, I loved, and I dove into the world of tiki looking at the history of surfing. And I found there was like tikis in Hawaii, and then there was a whole culture of like a fantasy tropical world that people did in the 50s and 60s, and I fell in love with it. I just got totally into it. I started by carving little tiny driftwood tiki necklaces, and then I could not stop. I just drew different ones, and I just wanted to make more and more to kind of make my own little world. And I've been obsessed ever since. There's so many aspects to it. I love it, from carving, drawing, painting, and yeah, all that stuff.
Now, did you grow up near the beach?
We lived about 20 minutes from the beach, so it was like close enough where we would go, but it wasn't like right on the beach where I could walk there. So it was always something that was like, oh, there was something about surfing and that really enticed me. And I didn't really get to start surfing until I was 16 and I had a car and could drive. So like growing up, we would boogie board and stuff like that. And then yeah, once I started surfing, I was like hooked. It was the perfect physical escape for me. You were in nature and you had to really be in the moment with waves and everything. So it was great. It was a good experience.
What was your first exposure to tiki?
Oh gosh, it's hard to put a pinpoint on it, but there used to be an old show, Gilligan's Island, which was like castaways on an island, and I think that had a big like marking on me. And then once a year we would go to Disneyland, and of course we would go by Adventureland and walk by the Tiki Room, and I think that had a huge impact because I could see like the bamboo fencing and the masts and all sorts of cool carved tikis and the roof and the singing birds. And when I started, I didn't remember that until like I started carving tikis. I'm like, oh yeah, the Tiki Room. And then that next summer, after I was carving little tikis, I went to Disneyland with my sister and her kid at the time, who was, I think he wasn't even one yet. Maybe, well, yeah, like one or two. And like seeing his eyes see all the birds in the Tiki Room really light up, his eyes lit up. And I'm like, oh man, there's like magic here. And I wanted to recreate that. And I think after that visit is when I went home and I carved my first toucan out of driftwood. And in my eyes, it was like, it looked just like the ones at the Tiki Room. At the time, there was no internet, or there was internet. It was in the early stages. I couldn't really look up like Tiki Room birds. So I had to just go off of like what I thought a Tiki Room bird looked like. And it turned out to be a better thing because it doesn't look exactly like the birds in the room, but it looks like a character of it. And that was, looked like my style, I guess you would say, which
Yeah,
at
actually,
the
you have a
time I didn't.
toucan right behind you right now. How
Oh,
different
yeah.
is your toucan now than it was
Yes.
than your first prototype?
This yeah, I mean, this one is, I've simplified them. I've changed them a little. Sometimes they have more texture. This is one of the more simplified ones, and he has some like discoloration on the eye. That's why I keep him in my office. But they've changed a little bit, but not too much.
What came first for you? Was it tiki or was it art? Were you doing other art things before you started carving, or
Yeah, so
was this that
yeah,
was
I've
this your
been
gateway into that?
no, I've been I loved drawing since I was a little kid. Um, I remember my mom found my report card from kindergarten, and it said he likes to talk a lot, but he's really good when he's drawing. So obviously, like from an early age, I have fond memories of drawing. Like me and my friends at an early age, we would draw, and it was a good escape for me. It was like it's not like my world was bad, but it was like I got to envision whatever I wanted on this piece of paper and a pencil. I remember when we'd go on little road trips. My we'd visit my grandparents who lived like 2 hours south. So on those 2 hour trips, my mom would put a stack of white paper in the back of the car and a number two Ticonderoga pencil, and I had a little clipboard, and I could draw the whole trip. And it just we were like, oh, we're here already, and so I'm sure they loved it because it kept me happy, and I get to draw all the weird little things that I saw, from video games or from cartoons and creating my own little things. So yeah, art is a part of my life and I loved it even before I
So,
found Tiki.
so early on, you said you were carving little driftwood necklaces. No, so what were you using to carve those?
So the very first ones, I had a little pocket knife and it had a little saw blade on it. It was really cool. It wasn't like super sharp, but it would cut the wood easy enough so I could literally do it on the beach. I'm like, let's see, at the time I was 18. So I carved the first one. I'm like, in my mind, I had this weird fantasy view of like surfing was like the old Gidget movies where there was like a shack on the beach and there was obviously it's got to be someone carving tikis, and I wanted to like live that out. So I started doing little ones, and then after about probably the fifth or sixth, I'm like, this is really slow with a pocket knife. So I remember talking to Aline at the time; she was my girlfriend, and for that Christmas, her and her parents bought me a Dremel, and like
Oh,
a
wow.
rotating, yeah, Dremel. It was like I could carve them super fast. I was hooked after then. I yeah, I would just like carve as many as I could, and then even once I was in college, I was teaching surfing, and I would carve about 20 every week for my surf school students, and just the more I did, the better I got. The first ones were not good.
So that's like probably the smallest thing you've carved. What is the biggest thing you've carved?
A big there was a few times now people have had palm trees or not even palm trees, just normal tree cut down in their backyard, and they leave the stump. The biggest one I carved was probably about 10 feet tall, and I had ladders, and I'd be on a ladder with a chainsaw, which was a little scary. The last big one I did like that was like maybe 2 years ago or so, not too far away. So yeah, big 10 footer.
I'm glad you wore your shirt because it shows off the trademark Tiki Tony style, which I'm in love with. I know so many other people love it so much. Like, what inspires that type of look, that style, that is your own signature look?
You know what? So, my parents had an old treasure chest full of National Geographics that were from, I want to say, like the 30s through the 60s. And I would look through them, and they had all these great old ads advertising Hawaii and these tropical destinations. And they always had these fantastic, simple illustrations of stuff, and it always captivated me. Like I grew up loving cartoons, and it was like here was a little cartoon character in a tropical environment, or like there was a palm tree drawn, and I loved any sort of line work. I've always been drawn to, no pun intended. So I yeah, it's those old 60s illustrations, or even like the UPA style of animation they call it. I love those simplified shapes. So that was a huge inspiration. Some of the twirly stuff on here, I didn't realize it, but people were like, "Oh, that looks like Dr. Seuss." And
Yeah,
sure enough, growing up, like my mom read to me Dr. Seuss every day when I was super, before I could even barely talk. And I all those books are burned into my memory, and it's just like was part of me. I didn't even realize it. I Yeah.
yeah. I know when I have to describe your style, I always say that you're the Dr. Seuss of Tiki. Like that is, I think
Well,
that kind
thank
of
you.
people go, oh, I get it.
I mean, I'm no medical doctor, but a Dr. Seuss baby.
maybe. So we were talking before you started this, and you said you're working on some restaurant projects. And I think this is really cool in respect to world building because you are able to help people create their visions of what their tropical world could look like for their restaurant or for their bar or for their store. So how does that process work? Somebody come to you and say, I have an idea. And could you walk us through like that process?
Yeah, usually it's different things. Like I'm doing some for the Lucky Tiki, and they're just doing they're expanding their bar now, and they just wanted four kind of traditional Marquesan style, but my take on Marquesan style. So that was fairly easy. I've done it before. Um, but there's other fun ones where like the Broken Compass, they wanted something like nautical, not necessarily a tiki. So then I got to kind of think, and like I looked at the decor in their build and it looks like pirate ship explorer. And so I'm like, oh, what would be cool? And I remembered growing up, there were always these sea captains carved. They were always in the marinas near Ventura and Santa Barbara. And I'm like, oh, that would be cool to have a sea captain that was actually carved from driftwood. So it like as if the story is this driftwood floated along, and then some maritime artist got it and he's whittling this ship's head captain, like before he's going to go out on his adventure. So I carved one out of driftwood. I even made like a fake little ship's wheel that went on it. And now it hangs behind the bar. And you like, if you're at the bar or the restaurant, you look up and like you can see all the cracks from the old driftwood. And I feel like that helps tell the story of like the whole place looks like a ship and it looks like it's meant to be there. So yeah, really like most of the restaurants or bars, they've been pretty open, and luckily I have enough stuff where they've seen like the style of stuff I've done, so they just kind of say like, oh, maybe something like this or that. um, and I've found probably the most different sort of commissions come from people who just want a carving in their house, you know and like I did this walrus head one, which was really fun, and it was just for a guy's home tiki bar.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I,
so
I love that you put on your beachcomber hat and you start to think about the story of what's going into this and who you. I mean, even almost turning yourself into that character, into that driftwood beachcombing artist. I mean, you're to be fair, you're near the beach, but you're also like in a neighborhood with houses
yeah,
and lawns and
yeah.
stuff. But you're not necessarily like on the beach whittling, but you put that mindset on, and I think it really carries through into that. And part of your tropical, the character of Tiki Tony, I think a big part of it too is something that you've created that you can take onto the road, and that's the Adventureland Rover. Would you mind telling everybody about the Adventureland Rover?
The Adventureland Rover was pretty crazy. Like one day, I've always loved old vehicles, themed vehicles. So I drew up what would be like my Adventureland vehicle. And I posted it. And at the time, I was either was at the tail end of when I was teaching, or it could have been when I was cleaning pools at the time. Um, and so I posted it, and then a friend of mine, I'd kind of known her through the tiki world, and she's become good friends over the years since then. And she's like, I have that vehicle if you want to build it. Because I said something like, this would be my dream vehicle. And she inherited this vehicle from her father, and it hadn't ran since he worked on it. It had been sitting for about 20 years. And I'm like, no way. So we went and looked at it, and I'm like, yeah, it looks like my drawing. It's an old Land Rover. And she's like, if you turn this into your drawing, you can have it. I'm like, no way. I'm like, seriously? Like, and so sure enough, over time, I got it. I found a mechanic to work on it. We got it running. I started adding props to it, and Trader Brandon really encouraged me, like, you got to get this thing rust painted. I'm like, I don't know, because I've been like being in the car world, you keep things pristine, but it
Mhm.
really added to it, and he convinced me to have Typhoon Tommy rust paint it at Tiki Oasis. And then I've just been adding little props to it here and there. I hid a fog machine in the engine compartment, so when I'm driving, I can like turn it on and it looks like it's smoking, and people are like, should I be concerned? So it looks like it just came back from an expedition. Yeah, it's fun. I love it. It's absolutely fun.
Is what are some of the okay? So you have the fog machine. What are other some of the details you've put into this?
There's an Adventureland mask that's mounted on the roof rack, and it's connected to a water container, so I can, at the flip of a switch, turn it on, and the mask spits out water. it doesn't it doesn't go far enough to like squirt on the car next to me, but it just goes out. It leaks like right next to my tire. So, and it's right next to like, on the roof there's like a gas can. There's right next to the gas can there's TNT, like in a triangle shape, so it looks very dangerous, and people either get it or they're kind of scared of it, and both reactions I absolutely love. Like when people don't like, they'll do the like weird looks like, what is that? Or the kids, or like, adults, they have a huge smile on their face. They're like, this is so cool. So I love it all.
That's amazing. I love that you have it, and I love the random places it shows up. It's almost like the Wienermobile. You never know where the Adventureland Rover is going to end up. In the last interview with the pro, we were talking with a writer, and she was talking about how she'll go out and just sit like at a cafe or a Starbucks to write for 8 hours. Now you have a different inspirational workshop. Would you mind telling us about the Beachcomber Shack?
Oh yeah, the Beachcomber Shack. So for whatever reason, when I was in college, I just got super focused on the idea of a shack. And like, this is the home of all the creativity in the world where it grows from. I envisioned this like bamboo driftwood shack sitting on the beach, and me in there, and it's like cozy, and I could work in there. And so when I was, let's see, I guess 18, 19 or 20 at the time, I built my first one in my parents' backyard, and it was like bamboo I found in the riverbed. And then they moved, so I took me a few more years. We got this house, and the first, like, when we were here, I started building it like in the first few months, and I just knew I needed some sort of creative space to kind of channel like this whole like storyline of tiki adventure beachcomber. It helps me get in the mood, and it's just like, it makes me happy, honestly. Like, that's what, anything that like I find fun and makes me happy, I try to follow. I figure if I'm having fun, then good stuff is gonna come from it. So yeah, Beachcomber Shack. It's yeah, I was just working in there and covered in dust. And normally I would do this recording from there, but our router does not reach that far anymore. I got to get a new extender or something.
Some more
So, but yeah,
coconuts and twine.
yes, exactly, yes.
So there's you also have another partner. Your wife helps you create with some of your Tiki Tony merchandise. Can you talk about how you guys collaborate and what she does with your art?
Yeah, so from early on, when I was first making my first mug, I was in school to be a teacher. And so created the first mug. I started casting them, and then I was too busy with school. And she's like, "Well, I could do it." She was going to be a teacher, and then she quit because she realized it wasn't for her. So she took over mug production, and this was like in 2006, and continuously from then, only stopping once we had kids. And then she started up again about last year or the year before. So yeah, we make the mugs together. Like, she even, after the like second or third mug, she started sculpting, and she's a better sculptor than me, which was cool. It was like, I could rough things out, and I would kind of leave, go do stuff or work or whatever, and I'd come back and see these amazing finishes. She would take the angles and make them perfectly, even better than I would have. So it's been awesome, and she I don't know if I have any of her here. That's a bad part. Like, with us working together at the time, we everything we made we sold, so we didn't get to keep a lot of the stuff.
No.
Um, so yeah, I don't have a lot of the old stuff lying around. Yeah, I was hoping I had one here, but anyway, so she just came out with her own mug last summer, and it's like based on kind of the Small World characters. but it also like when people see it, it looks like it's from our world together, which is kind of cool. But
That's
yeah,
fun.
she's yeah.
So for years you've been carving with wood, and but technology's here and is here to stay. And I know you've been doing some digital sculpting. Can you talk about how you're using new technology to do what you've been doing a different way for how many years?
Yeah, so once I went full-time tiki artist, I got an iPad, and uh, before then, I was drawing everything with Sharpie marker on white paper, and I would take a photo of it or scan it and then color in Photoshop. And then once I realized with the iPad, you could draw straight in and like do all these edits and amazing things, and it looked exactly like the drawings I was trying to do, by hand. Um, and then once, yeah, so digital sculpting started, and I'm like, I tried it a few times on the computer, and they were so complex. And someone made it was, I believe, I forget the story, but they wanted a simpler sculpting program for artists to use, because a lot of them you feel like you have to be an engineer just to figure out all the tools. So this person made Nomad Sculpt, and it's been amazing. Like at first it was a little tricky, but
Mhm.
it's way more simple than all the others, and it has the same output as the professional platform. So I can have something 3D. Well, I don't. This is this is a quick print, but this I digitally sculpted. Up close, you
Wow.
can see little lines from the printer, but on a resin printer, you would see absolutely no lines, and it's perfectly smooth, and it comes out exactly the way it was sculpted. So that's been an awesome thing. Nomad Sculpt. It took me a good 2 months to kind of get it to even for me to get it to look somewhat like my carvings. But now it's a little bit quicker, and like I can come up with an idea and sculpt something fairly quick. And it's it it's good to like I've had other people sculpt my stuff and they do an awesome job, but it's really cool to be able to do something like that for myself. Yeah, I love doing all aspects of art, and I guess that's why.
So you've worked hard, but I think you've brought in things in your mind into fruition. Like I said, through hard work, through creativity, through friends. What is the big dream for Tiki Tony? Like, what is that golden ring you're chasing? Like, what would be the ultimate project for you?
Ultimate project, it's hard to say. Like I used to think it would be like a tiki restaurant that had all my carvings in it, and it was almost like a Chuck E. Cheese or a Rainforest Cafe, and all my like driftwood carvings, they look like driftwood carvings that are asleep, and then they would like slowly wake up and have a show, and you would hear all the clanks of like wood clacking around, almost like puppets. Um, that like used to be my vision. I don't know if that's super realistic. Maybe a small version of that would be cool. And even what when I first started teaching, my escape and dream and goal was to have my own uh, cartoon or animation or something. So that's another goal. And I feel like every few years, like it sort of changes, but it always kind of wraps up into some sort of cohesive world that where you see it and it all makes sense. Like these carvings on the wall would all be from like some mysterious tropical island, or like and the animation I was working on, it was like these monkeys that were castaways on an island, and they had to use things from the island to get around. So who knows what it'll be next?
I don't know, man. You seem to attract the most creative people around who just like they see your art, they want your art, and they just want to be friends with you. And like every time I check like your Instagram, you're meeting with another amazing person, and I'm like, man, you are the coolest cat around.
Well,
So
thank you. I
I
do
so
feel lucky. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I do feel lucky, and it is Aline, my wife, will always mention like it's pretty crazy, like how many people who've done really noteworthy things in their careers are into tiki, and how I just it seems like we end up meeting them, from all aspects of life, from movie directors to whatever. It's pretty crazy. It's very it's very exciting, I guess.
So I have a two-part question for you. We'll start with the first one. And part of the audience for Imagine What is for kids who don't really know what they want to do, but they want to do something creative. So what advice do you give to the youngsters? Like, what would you tell your daughters if they want to get into this creative field that you're in?
The thing I tell everyone is like you absolutely have to follow what drives you and what you find the most interesting. There's a lot of hard days with creating stuff, and there's days when I'm tired and I don't want to do stuff, but I have the drive deep down in me that I still need to do it. And you have to think of it the way I think of it is the times I haven't been able to create, it hurts me so much that it almost feels like I'm dying. So you have to find something that it feeds your soul so much that you you have to do it. And if you don't do it, you're not going to be the person you need to be. So it took a lot of hard work and years to be able to do this full time. Yeah, it took almost 20 years to do it, like nights and weekends. But I always saw some sort of vision for how it could happen, and it was a lot of trial and error. I had other friends who were doing professional tiki work full time, and I couldn't figure out how they could make ends meet and do it. And it took time, but so yeah, you got to stick to it, trial and error, and then try to have fun because the things that are fun to you are going to make the things more meaningful and help you get through the hard times because there's going to be hard times in any career.
So second part of the question is other people who use Imagine What are adults trying to get over creative, like a writer's block or an artist block, or there's the blank sheet of paper, right? It's terrifying, or it's super exciting. So what advice do you give to the older creatives who just need to swift kick in the creative butt?
What's funny? Like, it's almost the same advice, like a little bit different. So when I'll get stuck too, and I know I need to come up with new things for the coming year or whatever, new mugs or whatever. The thing I do as I go and I try to have fun, I do things I know I love. For me, the first thing, the easiest one is to go surfing. When I go surfing and I'm in nature, there's something about it that totally sparks my soul. Being out in the sunshine is another one. Nature, and then honestly, like my wife and I and the kids, when we go to Disneyland, sometimes it's stressful, like with all the commotion of everything, but then every once in a while we'll go on a day and like it just feels magical. So for me, being in nature, surfing, those are the best things. If I wish I would had more made more time to go to museums and stuff like that, because every time we used to go, it would be so inspiring. So that's probably an easy one. Yeah, and I mean, it probably depends on the type of person who's watching this. But honestly, if you can think back to any of those times where you're like, gosh, I had so much fun and I felt fulfilled and enriched, like go back to the whatever those things were and do them again. Or prank call people. If you just start prank calling people, that can really inspire some things. Don't do that.
Don't do that. So, hey, man, thanks for joining us. I want to give you the microphone now. How can people find you, follow you, and all that good stuff? Let's do the Tiki Tony commercial.
Well, if you have a little bottle in your house, just wrap up a little piece of paper, put it in there, put a cork, and just throw it out. Any body of water leads to the ocean. I'll get your message and I'll get back to you. No,
That's
I'm at Tiki Tony on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. My website, tikitony.art for all the latest like carvings, paintings. I mean, usually like every, at least every month or so, I change the website and add new stuff on there. And that's about it. Yeah, Instagram is probably the easiest and where I'm the most active.
awesome. All right, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been the most tropical pro we've had. Uh, of all the
Thank you.
guests we've had on the show, you have definitely been one of them. Uh,
What?
I
Thank you.
Yeah, I honestly, I can't tell you how much you mean to me. All the times you've helped. You're an amazing
Oh,
human.
oh,
Thanks for joining me, man.
oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad I'm be a part of this endeavor of yours. And I mean, this as a kid, I would have loved this. I absolutely didn't ever figure out like how artists made a living. I knew like people could do it. So this is awesome. This is great what you're doing.
Oh, thank you, sir. All right, with that, signing off, and I just want everybody to imagine what they can create.